Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this call. My name is Russ Heinrich. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Communications here at the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. There's a lot to go over, so let me jump right in. We have a lot of ground to cover. We will be taking questions at the end of our presentation, so please hold them until then. You can use the raise hand function to indicate that you have a question that you'd like to ask. For those of you who are panelists, please turn on your video and audio only when you're speaking. Otherwise, turn off the video and mute yourselves so that we can proceed smoothly. Let me start by introducing everybody who's on the call. We have Lourdes Castro Ramirez, who is the Secretary of the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. We have Deputy Secretary for Homelessness, Ali Sutton. Gustavo Velasquez, who is the Director of the Department of Housing and Community Development. Francesca Marti, who is the Director of Legislation and Policy at the California Housing Finance Agency. And we are pleased also to have California Health and Human Services Secretary, Dr. Mark Galley, with us this afternoon. I'm going to turn it over now to Secretary Castro Ramirez, who will get things started.
Thank you. Thanks, Russ, so much for the introduction. And Secretary Galley, welcome. We are so pleased that you have joined us. Before I get started, I would like to acknowledge a few people that are with us today that will be available after the presentation to answer questions. From the Governor's Office, we have Mark Tollefson, Deputy Cabinet Secretary, also Undersecretary Melinda Grant here from agency, our Deputy Secretary for Fiscal Policy and Administration, Tiffany Garcia, Amy Wilson, our Deputy Secretary for Legislation, Deputy Secretary for External Affairs, Veronica Harms, and joining us from the Department of Finance, we have Dana Cruz and Brittany Thompson. And also we're joined by Egon Triplin, Senior Advisor in the Office of Planning and Research. And so thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you for joining us on the Friday late afternoon to hear more about the housing and homelessness investments that are included in the Governor's California Comeback Plan. Those of you who joined us exactly 1 year ago will remember that the Governor's updated budget at that time, during the May revise, reflected a real sense of urgency focused on the COVID-19 emergency. Today, a year later, we are in a very different place, and I am excited to be joined by my team, along with my colleague, Secretary Galley, to speak to you about what the California Comeback Plan includes and how committed we are to ensuring that as we deploy these investments, that we do so in a manner that allows for us to deepen our focus on equity, deepen our focus on people, and deepen our focus on ensuring that neighborhoods are able to recover and thrive moving forward. We, as you all know, find ourselves in a budget surplus that no one expected a year ago, and a once-in-a-generation opportunity to address Californians' most stubborn challenges, really with a commitment to racial and economic equity. That will drive everything that we do, and I know that this is something that you all share. California's economic recovery is underway, no doubt about it. And Governor Gavin Newsom has said that we also cannot be satisfied with just going back to the way things were. This week, as many of you have been following along, the governor has unveiled his proposed $100 billion California Comeback Plan, which outlines comprehensive strategies and major investments in California's people and in California's future. All this, as he has stated, with an intention to have California come back strong, to roar back with strength. The California Comeback Plan contains a comprehensive set of strategies that lead with equity. He has made announcements that are historic investments in direct relief for renters, for homeowners, for businesses, investments in education, investments in climate change, and investments in housing and comprehensively addressing homelessness. California's statewide housing shortage has been many decades in the making, and there are many reasons for why our state, similar to other states, are challenged with housing affordability and homelessness. And we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic, in many cases, made this worse, and made this worse for communities of color. In partnership with the legislature, we have made tremendous progress in just the last few years in terms of addressing housing affordability, in terms of furthering affordable housing production, but there's much more that needs to be done. And I'm simply so pleased to see that the governor in the California Comeback Plan makes continued deep investments in furthering housing production, housing preservation, and also, of course, addressing homelessness comprehensively. We also know that during this pandemic, many families have suffered severe financial distress. We know this, the governor knows this. So the Comeback Plan has the largest investment in what we are calling, from a housing perspective, the 4 Ps. First, production and housing. Second, preservation in affordable housing or of affordable housing. Third, protecting Californians. And then fourth, and really critical, and at the core of everything that we do, is investing in people and working to ensure that people and families are able to thrive. The plan includes direct, immediate relief for Californians and aims to ensure that families stay housed. Many of you know that earlier, just 2 months ago, we launched the rent relief program. The May revised includes additional rental assistance funds made available through the Biden administration under the American Rescue Plan. So in total, we will be leveraging about $5.2 billion in federal funding for rent relief, with another $2 billion to help with unpaid utility bills, and just over $1 billion in mortgage assistance to prevent foreclosure. To further protect homeowners and renters, the governor's plan also calls for expanding legal assistance for people who are facing eviction, displacement, or foreclosure. There cannot, and I have to say this again, there cannot be an equitable recovery without deep investments in housing and deep investments in closing the homeownership wealth gap. So in total, the housing package is made up of $9.3 billion that will create the environment at the local level for public, private, and philanthropic sectors to join us and to do more together. One innovative element of the overall plan is offering financial or financing assistance to homeowners for accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. So we'll have Francesca from California speak a little bit more to that, but we are including $81 million for the financing of ADUs that will enable us to both expand the supply of housing while also furthering the goal of equity. It is focused on low-income homeowners, allowing for the creation of wealth, and also allowing for the creation of additional affordable housing units. We're also deeply committed to promoting homeownership. And so the governor's proposing $100 million to expand the California Housing Finance Agency first-time home buyer assistance program to help people buy their first house and address the wealth gap, particularly in disadvantaged areas. And housing across the spectrum also includes housing for farm workers. The governor's proposing $30 million for migrant farm worker housing to address deferred maintenance, to make health and safety improvements, and to enhance the livability of these communities. So you'll hear a little bit more about that from Director Velasquez during his presentation. When it comes to addressing homelessness, the governor's California Comeback Plan includes a combined $12.4 billion for a unified multi-agency approach to addressing homelessness over the next 3 years, embracing what we call the Housing for All framework with a focus on prevention, on services, on interim sheltering, and on permanent housing. This overall approach also leverages, of course, on last year's Home Key initiative, which has become a national model. In just 6 months, local jurisdictions acquired 94 projects and created 6,000 units to house individuals experiencing homelessness at a cost of $846 million. So these are 6,000 new units, new homes, new places for people to call home that were created in 6 months in partnership with local cities, counties, and housing authorities. This year, the governor is proposing to almost quadruple the amount available. He's proposing $3.5 billion for Home Key 2.0 over the next 2 years. And we're excited to see this because we know that there's capacity at the local level to be able to leverage these dollars and to be able to quickly acquire buildings and convert them into dignified permanent housing for people that need affordable housing units. As the governor has stated, homelessness is solvable. We believe it, and we're committed to ensuring that we're doing everything possible across agencies, across departments, and in a coordinated approach. This package, the homelessness package, includes a real focus on working in a coordinated and cooperative manner across departments and agencies, and also in partnership with federal government, with local government, and with local community-based organizations. To make this possible, we'll be working very closely with my colleague, Secretary Galley at the Health and Human Services Agency in many of his departments, along with my colleagues at Calvet, the California Community Colleges, and the UC and CSU systems. I'm particularly excited that the governor is proposing a focus on addressing homelessness that is impacting families with children. Ending family homelessness is a must, it's a necessity, and I know that we can do this together. Family homelessness is the fastest growing segment of Californians. This is the fastest growing population, and the data that we have through the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council has given us greater insight into what's working and how we can work together with local communities to solve this. We are deeply committed to reducing and eliminating family homelessness over the next 5 years. We'll be focusing on providing real help to families and children, funding shovel-ready affordable housing projects through the Housing and Community Development Department, also working closely with the legislature and working closely with all of you as we look for ways to integrate services to ensure that this is truly a holistic approach of building the systems that families require to be able to move into housing and to be able to not just stabilize, but also be able to prosper. Solving for homelessness requires more than providing shelter, as important as that is. But in some cases, providing a safe, stable place to live is just the beginning of our work. We also need to offer services to individuals. We also need to ensure that we understand the health and social services component of this work, and that we are doing everything possible to integrate connections or integrate and make connections to social and medical services, to job training and placement, and to case management. And so today I'm, again, so pleased that Dr. Mark Galley, Secretary of Health and Human Services, has joined us to speak about our partnership and our commitment to solving homelessness. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Secretary Galley.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to join Secretary Castro Ramirez. Really just want to commend you and your team for just your thoughtfulness, this budget, and what your departments and agency have proposed. I really do think helps advance where we want to be in California, addressing not just the hurt and pain of the pandemic, but historic issues that have plagued our state, and give us today an opportunity with meaningful one-time investments in ongoing services, innovations, really building on some of the things you pioneered over the last many months in the state. Just really deep appreciation. And I'll just say on a personal note, your partnership and your friendship through what has been a tough year, getting to know you better and where your heart and mission are, has been a true pleasure. And I see why we have an opportunity to do as much as we have been able to do because of your leadership. I think building on the proposals that you've mentioned, I'll just highlight a few things that I think are important crossover opportunities, really places of partnership. It wasn't very long ago you and I spoke about doing something and recommending something to the governor that was bold and collaborative. And together our teams went and busily looked at how do we make a real commitment around family homelessness. As you mentioned, the fastest growing sector of our populations facing homelessness, and really within reach. And what's at stake is so important and so great. The social services that are built, the healthcare services that are built in Health and Human Services target so many young people throughout their life course who've faced struggles, who face challenges that often start with the family having trouble securing housing and other resources. So this bold goal of 5 years from now, saying we have a functional end to homelessness for families, built on not just the housing pieces that I know your team will describe in detail, but also these social services supports, $475 million per year for 2 years in the CalWorks Housing Support Program, really building that from something that started years ago as a small pilot in a few counties to being statewide. But this is really an incredible infusion of resources to go way beyond anyone imagined we would this year to support those families. Another $280 million a year for 2 years, expanding the Bringing Families Home program that focuses on families in the child welfare system who lost custody of their children as a result of their housing instability and homelessness. So really being able to increase those two programs, making a commitment in a major way to address the services. Additionally, there are other parts of the CalWorks system that are being improved and augmented. CalWorks grants going up by a certain percentage, just over 5% over the next year. I think really a tremendous chance to provide additional resources for families on the edge so that that housing security remains. The other major area of infusion of resources is in our behavioral health continuum. Secretary, you mentioned this inextricable link between housing and homelessness. Housing, homelessness, and health, excuse me. I've had the privilege of working on some of housing for health projects in Los Angeles County, and believe that it is next to impossible to address health issues of people under bridges, on streets, and encampments without making an investment first and foremost into their housing. So building up the behavioral health continuum that really allows services to be delivered in housing settings, whether they're in larger project-based programs or scattered site models. The investment here of 1.65, nearly or 1.64 billion of additional dollars at Department of Healthcare Services, building on what we had committed $750 million in the January budget for over nearly $2.4 billion in this behavioral health continuum, everything from, yes, clinical services, acute inpatient beds, other important beds in the behavioral health continuum, but also focusing on those scattered site and project-based models where we can enrich with clinical services and provide a dignified place for people to get back on their feet, get onto their clinical programs, and really change the arc of their life. The second piece, just focus on a few more additional programs at social services that we're excited to augment. The Housing and Disability Advocacy Program, another program that is growing much bigger because of the one-time investments here, $175 million for the next through 23-24 to better reach individuals who are receiving SSI and SSP benefits, to help them with services and other supports to remain or find housing. The Home Safe program, which has frankly always focused on the adult protective service population. This is our opportunity to expand it much larger with $200 million over 2 budget cycles to provide additional supports and services for older Californians experiencing or facing homelessness. This goes beyond the original intent of Home Safe to add a whole nother sector of older Californians to receive these services. And then lastly, and I think many of you have been eager to see investments in community care expansions, board and cares, other residential care facilities for older Californians as well throughout our communities. We've seen facilities like these close across our state. Their business model has been difficult in modern days to keep alive and keep going. We now have $500 million to invest in building up these facilities so that we can keep the promise of being able to allow people with serious health conditions, disabilities, older Californians who need a safe place to live with services to allow them to have that in reach throughout our state. So with that, it's a real pleasure to have a chance to share those important investments and proposals that are part of the HHS budget, but really are meant to collaborate and work together with so many of the things, Secretary, that you have included in yours. And just want to say, look forward to working with you and all of the stakeholders and all of the members of your respective departments to advance this agenda that the governor has boldly laid out today and throughout this week.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Secretary Galley. And I know that you have to go to your own stakeholder May revision call, but very much appreciate your time, very much appreciate the partnership that we have, BCSH and Health and Human Services, and really your entire team being able to work in a coordinated fashion. This is how government works. This is how we work to support our local communities. And I firmly believe that, health and housing are inseparable. And so too bad, so sad, Secretary Galley, we're stuck.
Yes. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you again, and hope everybody has a good rest of their afternoon and evening.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay. I thought I would bring a little bit of levity because I know it's a Friday in the afternoon. And so again, just, thank you all for joining us. Lynn Bonkock Liebert, who is our Deputy Secretary for Housing, could not join us today, couldn't be with us today, but just wanted to acknowledge her because she has played a tremendous role in the work that we're doing across agency and also the work that we're doing in coordinating the housing finance system and ensuring that our investments are well coordinated and that we're all rowing in the same direction. With us this afternoon at the helm of the Housing and Community Development Department and doing really an extraordinary job along with his team is Gustavo Velasquez. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Gustavo to lead in a presentation of the housing investments.
Thank you, Secretary. As the Secretary mentioned earlier, everything in the Governor's Comeback Plan dedicated to housing and homelessness reaffirms the frame centered on 4 critical principles: production, preservation, protection, and investing in people. For example, over the last year, HomeKey showed us what is possible when we work together with a shared vision and a sense of urgency. HomeKey brought an incredible 6,000 plus new units online in a matter of months and at an average cost point that is scalable. So building on that, the Governor's California Comeback Plan proposes to invest $3.5 billion more to acquire and renovate hotels, motels, and other properties. This will be the single largest investment of its type in history. $1 billion of that is targeted for families. And this investment and other similar strategies together could bring upwards of 46,000 new units of housing to those at risk of or currently experiencing homelessness. The pandemic has also underscored the criticality of getting new affordable housing units built and built quickly. The Comeback Plan addresses this need too, with a proposed $1.75 billion investment to help support ready-to-go HCD affordable housing projects. These are already approved projects that have been on the waiting list for tax credits. So with this help, more than 6,300 units of shovel-ready affordable housing projects could move forward in fairly short order. Now, it has been and continues to be a primary goal to build more new housing in a way that supports the state's climate goals and reduce vehicle miles traveled. Always, of course, with a focus on also furthering fair and equitable housing across the state. So this budget revise calls for $500 million to provide additional planning and implementation grants to regional entities for infill development, all targeted towards meeting the state's climate and housing goals together. Now, we speak a lot about new housing production because we understand that limited supply in California keeps making housing here extremely expensive, and this exacerbates poverty and inequality. But we must also take into account preserving the existing stock of affordable housing. Many properties in the HCD portfolio are coming to the end of their covenant periods that ensured below market rents for qualified tenants. We all have heard stories about communities in our state faced with gentrification and resident displacement pressures. Communities that in the past faced disinvestment and now are rapidly changing with accelerating housing costs. So we need to preserve the affordable housing we have in those communities before it's too late. So the Comeback Plan will enable $300 million to keep this housing affordable for many years to come. Another housing type that is part of the preservation strategy of the Governor's Comeback Plan, as the Secretary mentioned earlier, is state-sponsored farm worker housing. This is housing for essential workers that kept the country fed, literally, in the middle of the pandemic, risking their own lives. The proposal here calls for another $20 million on top of the $10 million previously proposed for seasonal farm worker housing to pay for the firm maintenance needs and critical renovations at migrant centers. These centers provide affordable seasonal rental housing near work locations for migrant farm workers, a group that, as we all know, has been disproportionately affected by COVID. Another point, you all know the governor since the beginning of his administration has been invested in getting excess state land available for more affordable housing opportunities. Here is a proposal that checks really production and preservation combined. A $45 million investment in converting excess state land into sites for affordable housing is also in this plan. This builds on the success of a joint HCD General Services Department program, and will go toward building the physical infrastructure that is foundational to transforming these excess sites into viable housing projects. Now, as we roll out more production and preservation funded, we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the opportunities to invest in people. have people trained and ready to participate in housing development. The governor is proposing $20 million to connect job seekers to housing apprenticeship opportunities. This will be managed in partnership with the University of California, California Conservation Corps, state and local workforce development boards, philanthropic organizations, and the building industry. And last but not least, rent relief. As Secretary Castro Ramirez mentioned, we hope to build on the COVID-19 rent relief program currently funded at $2.6 billion in federal rental assistance. The comeback plan proposes the deployment of another $2.6 billion. And so this combined $5.2 billion is designed to help people stay housed, as well as ensure landlords receive. And this part is new since the tenant relief program was launched in March. The landlords receive 100% of compensation for unpaid back rent during the pandemic, going back to April of last year. In addition, $60 million, this is very, very important, will go to the Judicial Council to continue providing legal assistance grants to organizations that help tenants. One more thing, $20 million targeted for youth navigators, programs, and emergency phone network in partnership with the Office of Emergency Services. So I know it's a lot to take on, a lot of information here. We're extremely proud and excited of this bold plan by the governor. I want to thank our team at HCD, some whom are on this call, for all their work during the budget formulation, and they will be available to answer questions if need be during the Q&A. Back to you, Secretary.
Thank you, Director. Thank you very much. Now it gives me pleasure to introduce Allie Sutton, our Deputy Secretary for Homelessness. Allie, together with Julie Lowe, the Executive Officer for the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council, have been leading the state's council, or the state's Interagency Council on Homelessness, also known as the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council. And so she's going to walk us through some additional elements that are included in the governor's proposed budget that speak to investments in homelessness.
Thank you, Secretary. So as noted by both Secretary Castro Ramirez and Secretary Galley, Governor Newsom's California Comeback Plan will invest $12 billion to tackle the homelessness crisis and helping more than 65,000 people secure safe and stable housing. The plan is a commitment to housing our most vulnerable Californians in an equitable way, and it honors the fact that people become homeless for different reasons and need different supports and services to regain stable housing, by providing housing solutions for the full diversity of people experiencing homelessness and with a real focus on racial equity. So to just highlight quickly a few of the key pieces of the overall homelessness package, as mentioned, the Comeback Plan has a strong focus on family homelessness. With this investment, we do intend to reverse the trend that both secretaries mentioned, that families are the fastest growing segment of Californians experiencing homelessness. The proposal includes a $1 billion targeted investment of HomeKey for families experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless, a significant expansion in family homelessness programs within the Department of Social Services that Secretary Galley mentioned, as well as $40 million for the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council to provide challenge grants and technical assistance to local jurisdictions to be innovative in their pursuit to end family homelessness in their communities and to help move the state closer to attaining functional zero for family homelessness in an equitable and holistic manner. The Comeback Plan also honors the fact that while permanent housing is the only true solution to homelessness, there are also thousands of Californians experiencing unsheltered homelessness right now, who are facing urgent and dangerous crises every single day. It balances our focus between crisis response and permanent housing solutions with investments in encampment resolutions efforts. Those encampment resolution efforts include $50.3 million for HCFC to administer targeted grants to local governments to help move people out of unsafe encampments and into safe and stable housing, as well as $2.7 million for Caltrans encampment coordinators to help mitigate the safety risk at encampments on state property and to coordinate with HCFC and our local partners. The plan also confirms our commitment to making true impact and holding ourselves and our local partners accountable to addressing this crisis. For those of you who are not as familiar with HCFC's work, our role is to serve as a state subject matter expert in homelessness policy and to oversee the coordination of services to prevent and end homelessness across the state. With that charge, we were proud that the council adopted the state's first ever action plan to prevent and end homelessness this past March, and that the HCFC staff launched the state's first ever statewide homelessness data warehouse, the Homeless Data Integration System, in April. HDIS streamlines homelessness data and analysis by combining information from 44 continuums of care into one single access point. We launched HDIS so that we can improve and come to a shared understanding of the kinds of services that are leading to successful permanent housing outcomes for people experiencing homelessness across our state. The May revision includes $5.6 million for HCFC to build on HDIS and to conduct a landscape assessment of local homelessness service providers and state-funded homelessness programs. The assessment will provide a detailed view of the range of services and strategies that are utilized at the local level and help determine if state investments are aligned with local homelessness response systems. This assessment will ensure that collectively there is greater accountability around the planning and expenditures of homelessness resources throughout our state. And collectively, we must move forward for strategies that seek to manage the problem, move away from strategies that seek to manage the problem and towards true systems level solutions that prevent and end homelessness. This assessment will help us do that. So with that, I'll hand it over to back to Secretary Castro-Ramirez.
Thank you so much, Ali. So now I'd like to introduce Francesc Martí, the director of the CalHFA, the California Housing Finance Agency Legislation and Policy Division. And don't see you, Francesc, are you on?
Yes, I'm here, Secretary.
There we go.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Secretary, and good afternoon to everybody joining us today. It's a privilege to join you in discussing this exciting plan. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exposed inequities in homeownership and highlighted the obstacles that lower income households face when they seek to buy a home and build intergenerational wealth. So to encourage economic recovery, resiliency, and equity, the California Comeback Plan includes $100 million in one-time federal ARPA funds to CalHFA to expand its first-time homebuyer assistance program, which helps first-time homebuyers with making a down payment, securing a loan, and paying closing costs on a home. CalHFA plans to deploy these funds to provide greater levels of assistance for those at the lower end of the homebuyer income spectrum and make the dream of homeownership a reality for even more California families. So in recent years, the California legislature has made it possible for households to invest with higher certainty of local approvals in accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, in all parts of the state. CalHFA will be standing up a program to catalyze the production of ADUs using $19 million in existing funds. So the California Comeback Plan proposes to expand this program by adding an additional $81 million to CalHFA's ADU program. This is expected to bring about 5,000 units of housing online quickly and inexpensively, with the added benefit of helping low and moderate income families create wealth building investments for their households. And lastly, CalHFA will be deploying $1 billion provided by US Treasury as part of the American Rescue Plan to implement a mortgage relief program for struggling homeowners. And with that, thank you, Secretary, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Francesc. And so at this time, I'm going to ask Russ if he can lead the question and answer portion. And just, as Russ joins us, again, I want to thank you all for being with us. I want to, of course, acknowledge the partnership that we have with each of you, with local government, and of course, the extremely important partnership that we have with the legislature. We definitely have an opportunity to leverage, the focus and funding that is coming from the federal government to deploy these resources to accelerate making affordable housing available to families in need. But we also are, very determined that together we can move the needle in terms of ending homelessness with a focus on families with children, but also a focus on ensuring that we're being holistic, again, integrating prevention services, interim housing, and permanent housing. So I see Russ back on. I will turn it over to you to lead us in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm also going to rely on Veronica Harms to help us answer these questions. I'm having to do this from my phone because I had a computer glitch. I don't know if I'll be able to see all the raised hands, but what we would like you to do is if you have questions, raise your hand virtually, of course, and then we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can. And once we get to you, please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
So I'll go ahead and unmute. There's Emily Hislop. I'm opening up your mic. Emily, unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Emily Hislop. I'm with a nonprofit organization, Project Sentinel. We do tenant landlord counseling. We're also a local partner with the state's rent relief program, serving a lot of communities in Northern California. We would like to know, and many people would like to know, if there's any improvements on the horizon for the rent application relief, the whole process. There's a lot of barriers in it for both tenants and landlords alike. Technological barriers, language barriers. There's been a lot of hiccups along the way. And we just want to know if there are sort of long-term plans for improving this system and taking in stakeholder input about ways we can make this more accessible. And I'll save the rest for more people because I'm sure there are.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much. First of all, I very much appreciate your partnership in terms of making the rent relief program available. And as I mentioned during my remarks, and then I'll turn it over to Director Velasquez to go into more detail, but we stood this program up on March the 15th. We have received 70,000 applications from across the jurisdictions that are participating in option A. And recognize, right, that some of the requirements in the application are a bit extensive and onerous, and some of that is related, frankly, to the requirements that are codified in the U.S. Treasury guidelines. But we're excited because U.S. Treasury just last week released a set of new administrative changes that we anticipate will make the application process much smoother. And so we're working with earnest to make those changes. I will also say that we have a local partner network led by LISC of organizations on the ground. And we're continuing to look for more partners to ensure that there is additional community-based organizations that are working closely with us. And so very much, look forward to working with you to, continue to improve the availability of these resources. But please know that this is front and center for many of us. And, there are a number of efforts that are underway to accelerate these improvements. I will turn it over to Director Velasquez to see if you have any additional points.
Well, I think, Secretary, you did a good job just basically pointing out that program rule changes will be critical potentially to increase the participation and ultimately get now with an additional $2.6 billion coming from the Treasury. Obviously, we want to make sure that those numbers continue to increase rapidly. We know the need is out there. I think your question, Emily, was also about the operational challenges. The answer is continuous improvement. I mean, it's been a little over a month. We have been made aware of some of the language access challenges, something I take very personal. I want to make sure that when we are translating any form, any instruction, that the translation is well in all of the languages where this information is made available. We've made some improvements on that front, but we continue to revise day after day how we can make, how operationally, how we can make the application experience and the information easily, readily accessible, linguistically and culturally competent, accessible, just as the marketing that is out there, just promoting that this program has to be available to everybody that needs it. So continuous improvement is the key. And I should also mention that very soon there will be a public dashboard at housingiskey.com that should happen very just within a matter of a few days, so that people see how much progress this program is making out there in the state.
Okay, I have just one more thing is to take into the account the experience that people are having, how they are accessing it. We realized doing email, there's no way around it, but there's problems even accessing it on their phone and trying to help people through the process. And I am an attorney. I studied all this rent relief stuff. I helped somebody in Spanish with an application yesterday, and she was very well prepared and had done some things. It still took an hour and a half. It's there's not going to be enough organizations to really get the help that's needed out there fast enough. So there's some programmatic changes that would enable us to educate people how to do it much easier. I understand the Treasury guidance issues, and we're glad to see that there will be differences, but there's just some basic technological and access issues that most people are doing this from their phone. That would be great to get through those barriers. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And I also would encourage you to send any of your recommendations to the ERAP inbox. We'd be really appreciative of those comments if you haven't already done so. Thank you.
You will. Thanks.
Opening up the mic for somebody who is listed as LSH CPSA.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lonnie Holmes. I'm the executive director for the California Portmont Square Association. So, last year we opened up our housing facility in Richmond, California, and it's congregate care, quite frankly, for women and children. The problem is that the counties would expect us to take referrals. However, the individual recipients would have to use their meager subsistence to help pay for their existence. In other words, to stay at the facility. And we're not about taking a measly $100 from individuals who are down and out and downtrodden and disenfranchised. And so the question is, how can we access state funding outside of going through the COC, which seems to be another tremendous headache for nonprofits like mine? And not only that, I also represent a consortium of 5 nonprofit organizations, and together we have about 220 beds spanning from Richmond, California down to the Central Valley. Additionally, Secretary Velasquez, I've been trying to reach your office, and it's extremely difficult to reach your office and get just some consultation. Frankly, we have another facility which is about 7,000 square feet, and we were trying to get funding to add another story so that we can house roughly 75 to 100 individuals. And understanding what both facilities that we have, with our Starlight Home, for example, we have an on-site computer lab was set up for virtual training. And so we also have a therapist and a medical team that works with us. And so that same process will be used for the facility once we're able to get renovation dollars to renovate that for not only for homeless individuals, but also individuals that from a reentry standpoint, given the fact that there's about 75,000 individuals that will be coming out of the California state prison systems here shortly. And so again, our organization, our Force of One, which is a collaboration of 5 nonprofits, we're in need of assistance. We've been grossly underfunded for many years, and we're struggling, and we run into many roadblocks with the COCs and all these other entities that we have to deal with. So my question specifically pertaining to that is that, can we go directly to the state and apply for some of these funds so that we don't have to go through all these additional hoops? Now, mind you, we have to still pay workers' comp insurance. We've got rents to pay. We've got all these expenses, right? And then we're throttled with the fact that we have to continuously go to all these voluminous amounts of meetings and listen to all the other pontification going on all around the place. And it leaves us in a situation where we need to find some other alternatives, quite frankly. So sorry for the diatribe, but I did want to just to kind of give you an idea of what's happening on the streets from smaller nonprofit organizations that are out here trying to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Ali Sutton if you can go ahead and respond, and Director Velasquez as well.
Yeah, just quickly, because I am looking and seeing we have very limited time and there's lots of hand raised still. I recommend a lot of that feels like it's potentially more valuable for one-on-one conversations. To date, most of our funding goes directly to counties or continuums of care, and then they sub-grant out. So I'm not sure we'll be able to I don't think we have a lot of programs that directly fund nonprofits, but happy to follow up. And maybe, I don't think we have a chat, but our email address is just hcfc@bcsh.ca.gov.
I'm sorry, can you get it to me one more time?
Yeah, it's hcfc
HCFC
at bcsh
BCSH, okay?
.ca.gov.
Great. And we're going to go ahead.
Okay. And I
Sorry, we're going to go ahead and move to Ray Pearl in the interest of time. If we can make remarks short, we will go a little bit later than 3 o'clock to get to some of these questions. We have 16 people with hands raised. Ray, your mic is open.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Hi, it's actually Marina Wyant with the California Consortium using Ray's Zoom. So thank you. I have 2 questions. The first is I'm having a little bit of tough time following a couple of the things in the summary. And in the presentation, you note 1.75 billion of ARPA money for the shovel-ready projects. And then in the summary, it says that's for 6,300 units. On page 115 of the summary, then it says it's 2,859 units. So I'm trying to understand sort of what units are for what within that 1.75 billion.
Tiffany.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess, Marina, very quickly that the difference in the numbers could be related to the fact that we are targeting 1 billion of the $1.75 billion for family units. So obviously this if the legislature were to pass this proposal, you know, we would come up with a concrete method to fund these projects. But I think the important piece of information here is the 1.75 billion, aside from the units that you're reading from the pages, of which 1 billion will be for family units. So that may be the difference in what you're reading.
So 1 billion of the 1.75 is family and 1 billion of 3. Okay, Tiffany, sorry.
Hi, and good afternoon now. And so actually, let me just clarify a couple things. So the 1.75 billion for the shovel-ready projects is a mix of ARPA and general fund dollars, and spread over the multi-year, there is some switches. And sorry to get a little technical, and happy to talk offline about this. And then there is the 3.5 billion for HomeKey, of which 1 billion is specific to families.
Okay, so maybe I'll check in with you offline to better understand the breakdown. And then my second question, just real quick, on ARPA funds, do those all trigger Davis-Bacon wages, or is that not the case? Do you know?
I would say we're still working through the eligibility and requirements of that program, so we can get back to you on that piece too.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. We will now open up the mic for Shireen Sandage.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shireen Sandage. I'm the chair of Black Developers Forum. Good afternoon. I just want to make a couple statements. One is California is the greatest state in the nation. To that extent, I am happy that you are now earmarking dollars for the 25 to 30-year-olds who are looking for their first-time homes. There is no reason for us to see a migration out to Arizona, Texas, etc. Those states are nowhere competitive to what we can offer our young people here in California. Let us continue to make that a priority. Second, I'm a developer. So as you know, the one item I did not hear is how much money is being allocated to fill or backstop the gap in some of the other programs that we would typically have access to. For example, as you know, we have run up against our debt limit allocation. Is any of this money going to offset or backfill those applications that are coming in? That's it.
Thank you, Shireen. I will see if Secretary Castro can take a stab at that one.
Thank you, Veronica. I was actually going to ask our HCD team and Gustavo and Francesca if they can speak to the way that we are aligning these investments to the TCAC and CITLAC system. And Shireen, I'm so glad that you've joined us. And also just want to say that we are in agreement with you on the importance of doing everything that we can to ensure that we're expanding homebuyer assistance through CalHFA. But I think Gustavo and Francesca can speak better to the point about the alignment to ensure that these housing developments, right, are able to leverage the financing and the resources that are coming in through HCD. Gustavo?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I mean, we have intentionality here is to align with the changes that we've been making as part of the larger housing finance reform that started last year with the changes at CITLAC. And we're obviously right now at HCD ensuring that our funding principles and criteria and guidelines just is really in line with everything that comes through the bond program and the tax credit program. So alignment very much in mind across all different programs.
Does that alignment come with more money, Gustavo?
Well, the money is, the funds are the funds that we just went through here in this presentation, which is, significant considering that the demand in just to meet kind of the bond cap, it surpasses 3 to 1, if not more, the demand. So the idea here is for the governor to include significant unprecedented level of investment to cover some of that demand that it just surpasses any supply that can be available in the system.
Okay.
Thank you. We will now open the mic for Gabriel Limas.
Hello, thank you for the information. I have just 2 quick questions regarding the $5.2 billion in renter assistance. The first one is the state's plan on distributing or allocating those funds? What is the plan on distributing those funds? Meaning, is there going to be some sort of eligibility criteria for cities and or counties to get direct allocations, and would those allocations be based on some sort of formula? The second one is if the state's planning to model and structure the program in a manner that would be consistent with the state's current emergency rental assistance program that is being operated using the federal U.S. Treasury's funds that came from the Federal Consolidated Appropriations Act. That's all.
Gustavo?
Yeah, are you referring to the 1.75 billion when you're saying how will that be distributed? Is that what you?
Well, it's more on based on the information, it indicates that there's 5.2 billion going towards a renter assistance
the
program.
rent relief program. Yes, the rent relief program will be basically the additional $2.6 billion. Remember, some of those the funds for rent relief go straight to local jurisdictions. Some come to the state. What the state administers will just be part of a continuation of the rent relief program that is already available, is already in progress through housingiskey.com. Of course, there is, there will be work in the legislature around some of the program rules that governed this rent relief, coming, a continuation of the SB 91 rules. So that is yet to be determined. But in terms of using this funds, it will be through the same program that we already have.
And Chris, I'm not sure if you wanted to add something there as well. Nope.
Oh, no, I think Gustavo got it. Yeah, it's just using the local jurisdictions are getting their direct allocations, and the remainder will be going out to the state, but those conversations are ongoing on any potential changes at this time. Right.
Great, thank you. Laurel Weir, your mic will be opened.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have two quick questions as well. The first is regarding the community care expansion. And I'm just wondering, will that be a competitive grant administered by CDSS, or will local governments, which normally aren't involved in the licensing of board and cares, will they have to be involved in that particular grant?
Ellie?
Yeah, I can take a pass at that, Laurel. I know our secretary from HHS had to hop off. My understanding right now is that it'll be administered through DSS and through sort of their community care licensing team, along with their housing team over there. But happy to follow up and connect you with folks over there for more details.
Great. And my second question, actually, Ellie, is for you. Could you say just a little bit more about the coordinated encampment outreach and the 50.3 million and how that might roll out?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking right now at trying to work with local communities around specific encampments, larger encampments, and working with communities that can bring some resources to the table and have HCFC sort of do these supplemental or partnership grants with communities to move folks into permanent housing. So, we've been talking with a few communities recently about ways to do that, and thinking through how to utilize Project Room Key and then move folks into permanent housing with other resources, and want to continue to try to have those conversations with some additional resources attached to those.
Great,
and it would not sort of be, the expectation is that it's not sort of a block grant like HCFC is used to, but really much more targeted resources to specific encampment resolution efforts.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Maureen Sidonian.
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much for such a great informative time together. I'm Maureen Sidonian. I'm the CEO of Habitat for Humanity, Greater San Francisco, and the chair of the board of Habitat California, which makes up all the Habitat affiliates across our state. My question is twofold. One is, we have thousands of units that we are all in our pipelines ready to be built to put people in the 50 to 80% area median income into housing. And our biggest struggle is finding the capital in which to build these, and also the process of this capital when we're able to get it, how long it takes to actually get the money and get reimbursed and be able to move forward. So my question is, both in some of the home ownership being a really important part of this ecosystem, there doesn't seem to be a lot of focus on home ownership other than through the down payment assistance program. And so I just want to lift up that you have ready partners who are out there. We would love to see this capital deployed into our communities to build the housing that we build for families, which is very different than a lot of the 96% of affordable housing that goes into rental. We certainly are sensitive to all the ecosystem, from the unhoused to the housed, but we want to make sure that some of this money gets lifted up in a priority for home ownership for low-income people. And we'd love to hear how we could access that, how we could be better partners. And I know myself and my colleagues are at the ready to join you.
Great, Francesc.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very important point. I just emphasized that my agency, College FA, has some very important components in this combat plan that deal with homeownership. The 100 million augmentation of our homebuyer assistance program is a very important infusion of capital into homeownership, and we're very kind of excited to be able to deploy that. It's targeted at the lower part of the homebuyer income spectrum. So I think this could make a big difference, and it could make a big difference in given the historical inequities that we have seen in access to homeownership and building intergenerational wealth. So that's one component. The other component is the mortgage relief for struggling homeowners that we're working with Treasury on standing up. So I think those two components together make up a very robust kind of focus on homeownership.
Thank you, Francesca. And I would just like to say to both you and Gustavo again that this is great, and we really need to find ways to unlock this money in different ways, because some of this puts serious restrictions on the ability for the nonprofit home developers and producers like Habitat to be able to be as efficacious as we know we can be. So please, please, we will reach out to you. We would love to talk and make sure that we can be as highly impactful as we know we can be and reach the potential for thousands more families like we have across our state.
Great, thank you so much, Maureen. We are going to take 2 more questions, and for those of you that we don't get to, please email us at housing@bcsh.ca.gov, and I'll put up a slide with that email here in just a second. Claudia Monterrosa, your line is being open.
Hi, good afternoon. Claudia Monterrosa from Mayor Garcetti's office, Chief Housing Officer, and I have one question only on the eviction defense allocation on the 60 million. If you could provide a little bit more clarity on how those funds will be deployed. I heard that it was going to be given to the Judicial Council to continue the existing programs there. Are other local governments eligible to apply for that, or is it just going to go to community-based organizations? And is this also for inclusive of prevention services and legal defense?
Great. Tiffany or Chris, if you can answer. Are we still on the line?
Sorry, apologies. What's the question?
I was asking, hi, I'll repeat that question. I'm asking about the eviction defense program and how those funds will be deployed in the state. It seemed that it will go to the Judicial Council and pretty much continue the existing program, but I'm wondering if there's opportunities for local governments to apply for this funding as well to enhance any kind of local efforts.
Yeah, so the 60 million that's in the mayor vision is to supplement the Judicial Council's existing efforts that they have through the state bar and local community-based organizations. There was a few years back, there was 20 million general fund that was added for this purpose. And similarly, 31 million added last year through the National Mortgage Settlement Fund. So this is just in addition to those funds that have already been done. And I believe they're in part formula grants. And then also there's a carve out for competitive grants for disadvantaged communities.
Okay, and a very quick follow-up question on Home Key 2.0 and what is the timeline for the deployment of those funds?
We have Sasha or Tim on the line who can answer.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm happy to answer that question. So in terms of Home Key 2.0, I would say probably a late summer deployment of the notice of funding availability would be a reasonable target to plan on. Some of that will depend in part on how the conversation goes between the administration and the legislature and what the final program sort of looks like. But our target is sort of the August-September period for release of the first notice of funding availability.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And our last question will be from Debbie Villaseñor. And again, the email, for those of you that didn't get the question answered live, is housing@bcsh.ca.gov.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Debbie Villaseñor, housing consultant. I've been in the affordable housing field for over 32 years, and I'm currently assisting Butte County and Tehama County with their permanent supportive housing programs. And I just want to provide feedback. I don't see very clearly any mention in the budget about operations dollars. That's a huge need for affordable housing developers to bring forward projects and finding resources for operations of those projects. There's a lot sometimes offered in capital dollars, but not in operations. So if we can speak to, are there additional operating funds going to be rolled out as well, so that we can provide multifamily projects in a responsible manner? And is there any way the state can help with the federal government in also offering more project-based vouchers? So I just want to let you all know that thank you for your good work, but over my 32 years of working in the affordable housing field, that always seems to be an area, an Achilles heel, if you will, that we don't get sufficient funding for, and it's always a part of the puzzle for affordable housing developments that needs to be addressed. So thank you all for your good work, and I appreciate your response to that question.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm gonna check with Chris if he wants to take a first stab at that.
Sure, and maybe Gustavo could kind of fill in after that. I don't think there's anything in the budget specifically for operations, but I will note that there is 500 million for the REAP grants, the regional, I forget the acronym, apologies.
Early action.
Yeah, early action planning grants. So there's, of the 500 million, there's 150 for planning, and then there's the 350 more for the implementation of that. And so I believe and Gustavo will maybe clarify on that those could potentially be used in part maybe for some of those operations or planning for developments. Didn't know if he had anything else to add.
Well, that's for the most part, yeah, planning grants. But I think we all at the state, we're watching closely with the developments in DC around vouchers. We're very excited about the opportunity to have an increased number of vouchers to use in the context of many programs that we have and how they can be used to provide the sustainability in the units and in the renters. So there will be, I'm sure, more information to come soon on that. But that's a very important development, even in the context of HomeKey, as many questions have been raised about the sustainability, long-term sustainability of those units. Vouchers is something that we will welcome, and I think it's going to happen. So just wait for more information on that.
And I would just add, just to build on what Director Velasquez mentioned, HUD just a few weeks ago released notice of 70,000 emergency housing vouchers made available across the state. We had an opportunity to visit with the California Association of Housing Authorities a couple of days ago. And if we have any housing authorities with us today, we just urge you to do everything possible to submit your acceptance letter of those vouchers, because to Gustavo's point, it's really important that we align the federal rental housing subsidy investments that are being made with the investments that the state is making in terms of creating new units. And then the last point that I would mention is many of our local continuums of care and also cities and counties have funding through the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council under the HAP program. And those dollars, are dollars that are available to provide services and support some of these efforts. So I would just, also encourage you to continue to leverage those partnerships, right, with local CLCs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And with that, Secretary, if you wanted to close out. Again, if you send in your questions to housing@bcsh.ca.gov, we will respond to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Veronica. Thank you so much for facilitating the Q&A. And thank you again to the team, the team that is really, working across state government, from the governor's office, from the Department of Finance, from our Office of Planning and Research, our colleagues at Health and Human Services, and a special thanks to the team within agency that has made this possible. Right, we've have been working very closely to ensure proper alignment and proper coordination, and to ensure that we're also remaining available and connected to what is happening on the ground, and informing and shaping the overall housing investments, and conveying that to Governor Newsom. And I'm just very excited, that the California Comeback Plan focuses and really doubles down on housing and homelessness investments. It is, as you all know, a priority for the governor. It's a priority for this administration. It continues to be a priority for all of us. And of course, I want to also share a story, because I think that it's important for us to not forget why we do what we do. The work that happens at the local level, the work that happens at the state level, at the end of the day, it's really about people, and it's about ensuring that everyone has the ability to reach their potential, the ability to prosper. And we know that this pandemic has impacted some communities, and specifically Black, Latino, Indigenous, people of color, disproportionately. So we are committed to ensuring that these investments are going to address those communities that are hardest hit, because as the governor has said, we are not going back. We are creating and charting a new course, and it's a course that's inclusive. It's a journey that requires that we do everything to ensure that we are creating an equitable economic recovery for all. And so the story that I'd like to share with you is something that just happened this week. Earlier in the week, I had the opportunity to join Governor Newsom in the announcement on Tuesday in San Diego. The announcement was the governor's unveiling the housing and homelessness proposal, which we have had the opportunity to cover with you all today. The event took place at Kearney Vista Apartments. It's a hotel that was purchased by the San Diego Housing Commission and converted into permanent housing under the Home Key Initiative. And the governor was there with the mayor and Supervisor Fletcher and a number of local leaders and dignitaries. And so as we were touring the site and making our way to the community center, there was a young woman with her baby, her toddler, a little girl who was wearing this bright sweater, a very bright pink sweater, and she waved at the governor. And the governor, of course, was caught by the wave and her just her presence, and had an opportunity to come back and say hello to the little girl, and to also meet the little girl's mom, Lindsay. And during the conversation, the governor asked Lindsay, tell me about your story. Tell me about why you're here. And Lindsay shared with us how she had struggled with drug addiction for many years, how she ended up living in the streets, how she became pregnant, and when her baby girl, Mia Grace, was born, how she lost her to the system. But things turned around, and she was fortunate enough to be able to connect to the resources there in San Diego, and fortunate enough to be able to move into a home key unit. And as she began to rebuild her life, and as she found stability by having housing, the caseworkers that were working with her were able to work with her in an effort to regain custody of her baby girl, Mia Grace. And so, that story, what she shared with the governor, what she shared with us, is a reason for why we do what we do. We know that many of our family members, our neighbors, the people that are around us fall into difficult times. And we know that we together can create systems and bring resources that will enable people to get back on their feet, just like Lindsay did. And I'm just, very appreciative for the work that you all do every single day, especially over the course of the last, 12 to 14 months. And I look forward to working closely with you and with our team as we continue to expand affordable housing, as we continue to do everything possible to preserve housing affordability, enhance, the livability of the housing that families live in, and create homeownership opportunities and build wealth for communities of color and communities, throughout the state. So thank you for joining us. Have a great afternoon, and we'll stay in touch.